All right, so this lesson is on nested animation using the bone tool. The bone tool is a tool that facilitates anything that is a hinged animation, such as a walking cycle or a dancing cycle or a waving cycle. Okay, the bone tool is this tool right here. And this bone tool allows you to, if we click here on robot dancing, it allows you to create this bone armature here. Okay, and this bone armature basically allows you to control the animation as such. Okay, to make it move. All right, so basically say here, if we look at the bone structure, you can basically position this to change here, and that will be reflected in the animation. Notice where I repositioned the arm. And there it is. I could change it here, where this guy goes, here, or here. And basically it does that animation for you, okay? It's all on one single layer. You don't have to distribute things to layers. But one thing that's similar to doing it manually is that these are all symbols here. If we grab our move tool and we select these here, these are all different symbols. So we still require the use of these different parts, okay? Just like we did when we created them manually. If you haven't taken a look at that video, make sure you take a look at the video preceding this one regarding nested animations, you know, manually doing them, because it has a little bit more info, more background. This one's going to be a little bit faster, okay? So basically, to get started, we're going to go ahead and do an example of this. All right, so to create a nested animation that uses the bone tool, the process is very similar to when we do it manually, as seen in the previous video of nested animation. We're going to start off with the robot. This robot here, you'll notice he's just drawn in object mode using the tools here in Flash. And basically, what we need to do is we need to create symbols for all of the parts that we wish to animate, okay? So we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a new folder, and we're going to call it Robot Parts. Okay, and then we're going to grab the pieces that we want to join together, and we're going to throw it inside this folder here, and it prompts us to create a symbol. I'm going to go ahead and name it. I'm going to make sure that it's a graphic and that it's hit to center registration. I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to do the same for all the different body pieces, okay? Okay. So now I have all of the symbols for the different parts that I'm going to animate separately, okay? And they're all here. And then you notice that there's some that are under and some that are over. I'm not going to worry too much about this because that's going to change as I create my armature anyways. So I may need to rearrange these later on. Okay, but basically right now all of these pieces are symbols. I know that they're symbols because they have this light kind of blue outline around them, and they have this little crosshair here. Okay? So now you have a stationary robot and all of its parts, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and get out of here, back into my scene. All right, so I have all these pieces. What I want to do is I want to duplicate the robot. Right-click, duplicate, because I want to always keep a stationary copy with all of its parts, and then I want to create one that is going to be dancing, okay? And that's the one you're going to animate. And that's just because sometimes you're going to want him to stop animating, and you're going to want to swap him out with the robot that's just stationary, okay? So now within this robot dancing, if we go in here and we select it, you'll notice that all of the symbols, we're in robot dancing, you'll notice that all the symbols here are the same symbols that we created for the robot, which are these in here. Because by nature of duplication, just like we did before, it automatically remembers all of the parts that you duplicated from, okay, all the parts that it used. So it's also referencing these in here. So you cannot just go in there and delete these, okay? Something to keep in mind. Leave them in there. All right. Now, with this, instead of animating these manually, what we're going to do is we're going to create what we call an armature, okay? So we select everything, okay? With everything selected, I'm just going to go to my bone tool here. I'm going to start from the center point, and I'm going to drag, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag it really close to the edge of that other symbol, but where it still kind of overlaps, okay? Just making sure that it grabs it. All right, it got it. Then I'm going to go here, and instead of going way over here, I want to kind of go in here because that's where I want it to hinge from, around that point right there. All right. There we go. And I'm just stemming from the inside, from the middle, and going like this. Okay. And you'll notice as I do this, the position of these objects here came forward. I'm going to go ahead and grab my black arrow. And at this point, I can grab these pieces. I'm going to hold down Shift to multiple select objects here. I can right click on them and I can arrange and send to the back. And now they're hidden behind the object. Okay. Now with this black arrow also, I can select and I can notice how this will move. All right. I'm going to undo. So basically now I have that armature, and you'll notice it created a layer here called armature, and it took everything that was in the layer, notice it's blank here, and it removed everything inside of it and put it into this armature layer. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this layer since we don't need it anymore. All we're working with is this armature. This armature is technically already activated to know that it's going to be in motion. That's just the nature of armature. I mean, look at the little icon. It's this little running dude, right? So he's activated. Now what we could do is we can just move over in the timeline, say here. We could right click, insert a pose, and then at this particular point in time you can start just posing your character the way you want him to work. Okay. Notice when I move this that the leg hinge area moves location. I may or may not want that. I'm just going to leave that one like this, but on this one I'm going to show you if I don't want that hinge to move there, what I can do is I can actually position it where I want it. I can go into properties, okay, and with this part of the armature selected here, this bone, I am going to go in here and where it says enable joint rotation, I'm going to uncheck it. Okay, and now notice if I move it with my black arrow, it just uses that as the hinge. Okay, so as you want to move these and reposition these, you can do that. Okay, you can just make sure that you select the bone. You can enable the rotation location, and you can move it where you want it, and you can actually even stop it here if that's where you want it. Okay, and you can just make sure you're on the bone to get that options to pull up. I can enable, and then I can change that there. Notice it does that. Okay, so other things that you can do is say that you don't want this leg to move at all, like to have the ability to move. You can actually pin it. I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to see that little pin. It's like a little thumbtack. I'm going to click on it, and now I can't even move it. It's not moving. Okay, so that's because it's locked there. So I'm going to go ahead and unlock it there, and now I'm just going to pose it. So this guy's going to go like this to this, and then I can insert another pose to this, to this, to this. Okay, notice because I let my hinge move around, it's all looking all crazy and it's detaching here. So at some point you might have to, you know, go to the bones, you know, enable the rotation, reposition these to where it doesn't create awkward situations. I'm just gonna see, now it's not loosening there. Okay, so basically we're going from here to here to there. All right. Okay, and then you got to insert the last pose, again remembering that you want to make it kind of look more closely to the original. So we're going to go ahead and try to bring this back up. I'm going to go ahead and, you know, change this as much as I can back to the original look of it. All right. And try to bring it as close to normal as possible. Enable the rotation so that I can move this back closer to where I had it, and then unlock the rotation. Okay. There are other settings in here. When you click here, there are other settings like the Y translation, the X translation. If you enable it, then you'll be able to like move these side to side, things like that. Okay, but those you tend not to use as often, so I'm just going to go ahead and ignore those a bit. All right, but you can always play around with the settings. I'm providing you with some other links to more about the bone tool if you want to check those out, okay? So I'm going to bring this back to as normal as possible, put it back into its original pose. That way when it jumps back to the beginning and plays out, it'll be more seamless. And remember, the goal is that you only have to create this once, and then when you put it onto the timeline, it automatically repeats itself as long as you drop it on the timeline for longer than 32 frames, which is the length of this cycle animation here, okay? So pretty much it's done there. You'll notice that if you go into the library, you can, if you click on this one's the stationary one, and this one is the robot dancing, you'll now see the little icon there. And you'll see that sequence animation and how that plays out. All right, so now I'm going to go back into the scene. I'm going to go to my layer 1, first frame here, and I'm going to go ahead and drop my robot dancing in here. And I'm going to extend the animation for the 32 frames, insert frame, and you'll notice that it does the nested animation here, okay? And it does it only one cycle because it's only the length of the nested animation. But if I go ahead and extend this, I'm just going to drag this to a lot longer, okay? And I go back to the beginning and play it. Because it's longer than the nested animation amount, it automatically repeats itself on the main timeline, okay? All right, so this is nested animation using the bone tool. It's a lot easier, in my opinion, than doing it the manual way. You need one example of nested animation in your project. It's up to you which one you choose to use, whether you do it manually or using the bone tool, but you do need one example. So have at it. This concludes your lesson on the bone tool. If you have any questions, please make sure to contact me.